Sir, we don't get tips here, though. Not unless we know our place.
You disgust me, serving me with that greasy little smile like you think you're someone. That's the first thing Layla Monet heard that morning, spit across the table by a man in a camouflage hat and beer belly, like she wasn't even human. No good morning. No, excuse me. Just a verbal slap, bold and sharp, designed to sting in public. She didn't flinch. Instead, she gently placed the plate of toast on the table, her fingers steady, her face calm. Her smile, the one she'd learned to wear like armor, didn't fade, even as the group of regulars let out a condescending laugh. They always sat at the same booth, booth #6 by the window, as if the sunlight gave their bigotry permission to shine louder. Ricky's Griddle wasn't some five-star place, it was a worn-down diner in a forgotten corner of Georgia. But to them, it was their kingdom. And to Layla, it was survival. At 22, Layla was beauty in motion. Warm brown skin that glowed in the morning light, deep-set eyes that saw more than she let on, and a voice smooth as honey when she wasn't being talked over. She moved with grace, apron tied tight, hair pinned neatly, shoes scuffed from double shifts. She didn't complain, because in this town, black girls didn't get to complain, they just worked harder. She turned away, tray in hand, heels tapping softly against cracked linoleum, and headed back behind the counter just in time to hear the door creak open. A man walked in, quiet, composed. Not flashy, not loud. Just present. He wore clean jeans and a simple black tee. No entourage, no gold chains, just stillness, like a mountain with a heart that beats slower than the world around it. Layla glanced up. She'd never seen him before. But something in the way he looked at the room, not through it, made her pause. He sat down in booth #2, alone. "Can I get you something?" she asked, voice practiced but kind. He didn't even glance at the menu, just said, "House toast, please." As she turned to leave, Layla leaned in just a whisper, soft enough for only him. "Sir, I'm used to serving toast and insults, but I never expected to serve it to someone like you." And that's when everything changed. Because the man sitting there was Marcus Legrand, billionaire CEO, tech visionary, black excellence in the flesh, and the last person anyone expected to walk into a place like this. What happened next unraveled everything this town thought it knew about status, color, and power. This isn't just a viral twist. This is a black story not just of pain, but of pride. You're watching Hidden Worth, where every forgotten voice has a place to speak, and if this moment hit you like it hit him, then trust me, you're going to want to stay. Because this isn't the story of a meal. It's the story of a reckoning. It starts with toast, but it ends with truth. Layla Monet had never left the town of Waitress, Georgia. She'd never needed to. Or maybe she'd just never been allowed to dream far enough outside its rusted limits. The town was small, not the kind that showed up on maps unless you zoomed in twice. A place where dollar stores outnumbered libraries, where the bus didn't run after dark, and where the railroad tracks still whispered of division more than direction. In Waycross, people didn't say things to your face. They said them with looks, with silence, with the way they handed you a receipt without ever meeting your eyes. Layla had learned early how to read between the lines. She grew up in a 2-bedroom duplex on the edge of town, the kind with paint peeling off the porch railings and a lawn small enough to mow in 10 minutes. Her mother, Denise, was once a nurse, sharp, capable, and always dressed like she had somewhere important to be, even if she was just going to church. But a stroke 2 years ago had taken her speech, her balance, and with it, most of their income. Layla had dropped out of college the same week her mom came home from the hospital. She packed up her textbooks, printed one final resume, and walked into Ricky's Griddle, the same diner her mother once brought her to for pancakes on Sunday mornings after church. Now, she served those pancakes. 6 days a week, Layla worked double shifts, wore the same 2 pairs of black non-slip shoes, and kept a spare apron in her locker because the old one was permanently stained with grease. She never called in sick, couldn't afford to. Ricky's Griddle was the kind of place where the walls smelled like bacon no matter how much bleach you used. The booths had duct tape on the cushions. The coffee was always a little burnt. But it was full every morning by 7 a.m. Retirees, construction workers, small business owners, and the local sheriff's department. It was also full of history, quiet, bitter, and thick as the syrup they served in plastic bottles. Layla knew her customers by name. She knew who tipped and who didn't, who asked for real butter, and who just wanted someone to talk to. She also knew who looked through her, the ones who couldn't quite hide the discomfort of being served by someone whose skin reflected a history they preferred to ignore. There were no protests here, no signs. Just a shared understanding of who got to sit where, who got spoken to with kindness, and who didn't. Still, Layla smiled. She smiled because that's what you did, because her mother once told her, when they try to make you small, don't fight back loud. Just shine so bright they gotta squint. And so she did. Even when the same table of white men joked about her exotic name, or when the blonde hostess passed her the worst section of the floor, or when her paycheck barely stretched to cover her mom's insulin, Layla showed up. Every single day. She walked to work 1.6 miles from her apartment because the old Buick hadn't started in weeks. Her phone screen was cracked, her bank account stayed under $50, and her dreams were carefully folded between work schedules and prescription receipts. But she had them. She dreamed of going back to school, studying architecture, building homes her mama could walk through without fear of falling. She kept a notebook under her bed, full of sketches and floor plans. Little pieces of hope drawn in pencil, smudged by time, but never erased. And in the middle of this town that never noticed her was the man no one recognized. Marcus Legrand. He'd been gone for more than 20 years. Born in Waitress, raised by a single mother on food stamps, Marcus was the kid who used to sell candy at school to pay for computer parts. He got a scholarship to MIT, disappeared into Silicon Valley, and came back a billionaire. Not that anyone here remembered, or cared. To them, he was just another face, another customer. But for Marcus, this return was no accident. He had unfinished business. A silent promise to a mother buried on the hill behind St. Anthony's Church. A memory of being denied a booth at this very diner when he was 13 because they were full even though half the tables were empty. This wasn't just a visit. It was a reckoning. And the first person to greet him back in Waycross was a young woman with the same fire in her eyes he remembered in his mother. Layla Monette. The girl who smiled through storms. The girl who whispered something that shattered his silence. It didn't take a slur to be racist. In Waycross, prejudice wasn't always loud. It was quiet, like the side glances Layla got when she refilled water glasses, like the way customers called her sweetheart, with just enough condescension to make it sting. It was in the way some people placed their orders without looking up, or how they clenched their wallets a little tighter when she walked by. Layla had learned to spot it, to feel it in her bones before a word was even spoken. At Ricky's Griddle, there were 3 black employees: Layla, an older cook named Reggie who mostly stayed in the back, and a teenage dishwasher named Jamal who always wore headphones and rarely smiled. Everyone else, from the manager to the servers to the customers, were white. It wasn't a problem, until it was. Layla had her section, 6 tables and 2 booths near the back. She got the tables that rocked, the ones closest to the kitchen door and the screech of the ice machine. The ones where tips were small and patience even smaller. Every morning, around 8:15, the same 4 men came in and sat at table 6. They wore construction boots, camo jackets, and the kind of smirks that made her stomach turn. They always ordered the same thing: eggs over, easy, bacon, and toast, and always found something wrong with it. "Burnt again, princess," one of them would say, holding up the toast like it was a crime scene photo. "Must be that attitude of yours heating up the grill," another would chime in. They never called her by name, only girl, darlin', or you people. One morning, Layla placed their plates down gently, only for one of them, a man named Clint, to flick a piece of bacon off his plate with the end of his knife. "Still can't get it right, huh?" he said loudly, making sure the whole diner heard. Layla inhaled slowly, nodded once, and walked back toward the kitchen. The manager, a thin woman named Miss Carla with big hair and small sympathy, caught her at the door. "Try not to make a scene," she whispered. "They're regulars. Don't give them a reason to complain." Layla wanted to scream. Not because of the bacon, not because of the smirks, but because this was every day. The microaggressions that stacked up like dirty plates, the insults disguised as jokes, the way her dignity was always the first thing to get cleared from the table. She wasn't weak, but even the strongest hearts bruise. That afternoon, as she balanced 3 plates and a pot of coffee, one of the men reached out and brushed his fingers against her wrist. "Bet your boyfriend loves those hands," he said with a wink that made her skin crawl. The pot almost slipped. Layla froze, gripping the handle tighter than necessary. Her voice stayed calm, but her eyes said everything. "Please don't touch me again." The diner went quiet for a second, just long enough for everyone to notice. Then the man laughed. "Feisty," he muttered, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "You people always got an attitude." Miss Carla appeared like clockwork, her smile stiff. "Everything okay here, gentlemen?" she asked. They nodded. "Great," Carla said. "Layla, why don't you take your break?" Break. A word that didn't mean rest, it meant retreat. In the staff room, Layla sat down on a plastic chair and stared at her phone. No messages, no missed calls. Just a cracked screen and a calendar filled with bills. She didn't cry. She hadn't in months. But the heaviness stayed, sitting in her chest like unpaid rent. Outside, the laughter continued. Table 6 was enjoying their second round of coffee on the house. As always, the world spun on. Layla stood up, smoothed her apron, and stepped back into it. What choice did she have? This was the unspoken contract she'd signed with the world the moment she put on that uniform. Serve, smile, swallow. Until, one day, someone finally looked her in the eye and didn't see the help. Until a stranger with quiet eyes and billionaire secrets walked in and sat at booth number 2. He didn't laugh. He didn't smirk. He just listened. And for the first time in a long time, Layla felt seen. But before that moment changed her life, she had to survive the ones that tried to erase it. Marcus Legrand didn't walk into Ricky's griddle like a billionaire. He didn't pull up in a town car or wear a designer suit. There was no security detail, no gold watch flashing under the sleeves of a $1,000 blazer. If anything, he looked like someone who'd just gotten off the night shift. Worn jeans, clean sneakers, a plain black t-shirt that hugged his broad shoulders like it belonged there. But there was something in the way he moved unhurried, deliberate that made the air shift when he walked through the door. Layla noticed it instantly. Not just because he was new, but because he looked around the room really looked. He didn't scan the space for a table or check his phone like most people did. His eyes moved across the diner like he was taking inventory, not of the food or the furniture, but of the people. She caught his gaze for half a second and something in it made her heart skip. Not in the way someone flirts or stares too long. This was different. His eyes didn't look through her like she was invisible. He saw her. It was subtle, but in a place like Waitress, where people learn to vanish in plain sight, being seen felt almost dangerous. He sat at booth number 2, the same booth Layla used to sit in with her mom as a child, when Sunday mornings meant pancakes and soft gospel music from the jukebox. That booth hadn't seen a black customer in months. Layla smoothed her apron and walked over, trying not to show the weight of what had just happened 10 minutes before. Her face held its usual warmth, but her stomach was still in knots. "Morning," she said, grabbing her pad. "What can I get started for you?" The man didn't even open the menu. His voice was deep, clear, and calm. "House toast, please." Layla blinked. That was it? No side of eggs, no coffee, just toast. She nodded, coming right up. But then, something made her pause. Maybe it was the tired look in his eyes, not the kind of tired that came from lack of sleep, but the kind that came from living in a world that demanded too much for too long. She leaned in just a little closer and, without thinking, whispered, "Sir, I'm used to serving toast and insults, but I never expected to serve it to someone like you." It slipped out before she could stop it. But Marcus didn't flinch. He stared at her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, a faint smile touched the corner of his mouth, not mockery, not amusement. Recognition, as if he understood more than she'd said, as if he'd once said it to someone else. Layla straightened up quickly, her heart racing. She turned and walked away, cursing herself silently for speaking out of turn. What if he complained? What if Carla overheard? But Marcus didn't say a word. He just sat there, hands folded, watching the room and her with the stillness of a man who'd waited years to return somewhere he never wanted to leave in the first place. She brought out the toast a few minutes later, 2 thick slices, golden brown, brushed with butter and a drizzle of local honey. "Here you go," she said softly, placing the plate down. He nodded. "Thank you, miss." "Layla," she replied. "Layla Monet." "Monet," he repeated slowly, like he was tasting the name. "That's a name you don't forget." She felt her cheeks warm. Before she could respond, a voice from table 6 cut through the moment. "Well, I'll be damned. Didn't know they let folks like him sit up front now." Laughter followed, that same, stale laugh she'd heard every day. Layla's fists clenched at her sides, but Marcus didn't even turn his head. He kept his eyes on her. "You deal with that every day?" he asked, his voice low. Layla hesitated, then gave a short, bitter laugh. "This? Oh, this is nothing. You should see Sundays." He looked away for a second, not in defeat, but calculation, like a man taking mental notes, like a man writing a plan. She didn't know who he was. Not yet. But something told her that he wasn't here just for breakfast. Before the billions. Before the tech empire. Before anyone knew his name beyond the block, Marcus Legrand was just another skinny kid from the south side of Waitress. He grew up on Monroe Street, in a 2-bedroom rental with cracked walls and carpet older than him. His mama, Lorraine, worked 2 jobs days at the local clinic, nights cleaning office buildings. She carried tired in her bones but love in her voice. Every morning, she packed his school lunch with a folded note that always ended with the same words. "Don't let the world decide your worth." That line stuck with him. Even when the kids at school teased him for wearing the same shoes all year. Even when the teachers assumed he didn't belong in the advanced math class. Even when the cashier at the corner store followed him down every aisle like he had sticky fingers just for being born the way he was. At 13, Marcus taught himself basic coding on a broken-down desktop a neighbor was throwing away. The screen flickered, the keyboard stuck, and it took 15 minutes just to load a single web page. But it was enough to spark something. He sold candy at school to buy computer parts, took odd jobs mowing lawns, sweeping church floors just to save for a second-hand router. By 16, he'd built his first website. At 17, he got a scholarship to a summer tech program in Atlanta. That summer changed everything. He met kids who talked about venture capital like it was a language, kids with laptops newer than his dreams, kids who didn't laugh when he said he wanted to start a company. Still, Marcus never forgot Waitress. He never forgot how it felt to be 13, standing outside Ricky's griddle in a shirt too big for his frame, holding his mama's hand as they waited for a booth. He remembered the way the hostess glanced at them, paused, then said, "Sorry, we're full," even though 3 tables sat empty. They walked out hungry that night. He remembered his mama didn't cry. But she did sit in the car for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel like it held her dignity in place. That moment planted something in Marcus. Not bitterness. Blueprints. He promised himself 2 things. He'd never be turned away again, and one day, he'd buy this town one piece at a time, not out of revenge, but out of purpose. He graduated top of his class, got into MIT on a full ride, spent 4 years in Boston chasing code and coffee and the kind of silence only found in 3 a.m. Dorm rooms full of ambition. By 24, he launched his first startup, a data management platform designed to make cloud security faster for small businesses. Investors laughed. Until they didn't. By 28, he'd made his first 100 million. By 32, he'd built Legrand Systems, a Fortune 100 company with offices in 7 countries and contracts with 3 governments. But success didn't erase memory. Every year, on his birthday, Marcus wrote his mother a letter even after she passed. He told her about new partnerships, new countries, new failures, and wins. He told her what it felt like to finally sit at every table he was once denied. But something always felt unfinished. So, at 41, he came back. Not for the town. For the promise. The diner was still standing. Same chipped bricks, same sun-bleached awning. Different name on the door, but the same energy inside. The same booth by the window where people like him weren't welcome unless they were scrubbing dishes in the back. But this time, he wasn't walking in as the poor kid with calloused hands. He was walking in as the man who could buy the entire block, and was about to. He didn't come with fanfare. He didn't announce himself. He wanted to see it first, to feel the town as it really was, not the way people cleaned it up when a camera showed up. And then he met Layla. The way she moved. The way she swallowed rage with grace. The way she whispered that single line, not knowing it was the kind of sentence that echoes in a man's memory long after the sound fades. "Sir, I'm used to serving toast and insults, but I never expected to serve it to someone like you." It was as if his mother had spoken through her. As if the town itself had been holding its breath, waiting for someone to finally inhale something more than silence. That day, Marcus didn't just order breakfast. He restarted a mission. A mission to return not as a customer, but as a reckoning. The diner was almost empty by the time Layla started closing down. The scent of fried onions still clung to the walls, and the last customers, a couple of retirees who ordered the same meatloaf every Tuesday, had just stepped out into the night. The silence that followed was her favorite part of the day. She wiped down the counter slowly, hands moving on autopilot, her mind still stuck on the man from earlier. Marcus. She didn't know his full name yet, didn't know what he did or where he came from, but she remembered the way he looked at her, not with pity, not with curiosity, but with quiet respect. As if he knew something about her story without asking for the details. It was almost 9 p.m. when the bell above the door jingled again. Layla didn't look up at first. She figured it was someone who forgot their wallet or came in asking for directions. Then she heard the footsteps, slow, confident, familiar. She looked up. It was him. Marcus. Same jeans, same black t-shirt. But this time, the weight behind his eyes felt heavier, like he'd spent the afternoon walking through memories. Layla blinked in surprise. "Didn't expect to see you back so soon." He smiled, just a little. "Didn't expect to want to come back so soon." She raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. Instead, she reached under the counter and grabbed a clean mug. "Coffee?" "Only if you're joining me." She paused for a second, then shrugged. "Booth or counter?" He nodded toward the corner booth, the same one from that morning. Layla poured 2 cups, added cream to hers, then slid into the seat across from him. They sat in silence for a few seconds. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, just waiting. Finally, Marcus spoke. "You said something earlier," he began, "about serving toast and insults." Layla gave a small laugh. "Yeah, well, comes with the apron. You shouldn't have to wear it like armor." She looked at him closely now. "What do you do, Marcus?" He took a sip of coffee before answering. "I run a tech company. I build systems to help small businesses protect their data. Grew it from nothing." Layla tilted her head. "And now you just wander into diners?" "Sometimes," he said, setting the mug down. "Sometimes I come home." Her breath caught a little. "This is your home?" "Was," he replied, "long time ago." He didn't offer more, and she didn't press. Instead, she asked, "So why come back now?" He looked around the diner at the faded signs, the sticky floors, the ghost of a boy who once stood outside with his mother, waiting for a table that would never be offered. Because sometimes, when you finally have the power to change things, you have to decide what kind of man you're going to be. Layla leaned back, absorbing the weight of that sentence. "You planning to change this place?" "I'm planning to start with it." She studied him. "Why here?" He didn't smile this time, just looked her straight in the eye. "Because I remember what it felt like to be you." The room went still. Layla set her cup down slowly. "You don't know me." "I know enough," Marcus said. "I know what it means to smile when it hurts. I know what it means to work twice as hard to earn half the respect. And I know what it means to carry the weight of someone else's silence." She looked away, suddenly self-conscious. "I'm just trying to make it to Friday," she said quietly. "Making it to Friday isn't living, Layla. It's surviving." She let that sit for a moment, then whispered, "That's all some of us have ever known." Marcus leaned forward, elbows on the table, his tone soft but firm. Then let's build something new. Layla blinked. What are you talking about? He pulled out a small leather notebook from his jacket and slid it across the table. Inside were scribbled plans, sketches, outlines of a project she didn't understand yet. But she saw her name. On page 1. You ever think about what you'd do if you didn't have to clock in here anymore? He asked. She stared at him. Long and hard. No one's ever asked me that before. Maybe it's time someone did. Outside, the street was quiet. Just the hum of a street light and the whisper of warm southern wind. Inside, something had shifted. Not just the air, but the story. 2 cups of coffee. 2 lives from the same town, separated by time, united by truth. That night, Marcus didn't just come back for dinner. He came back to rewrite a legacy. The next morning, Ricky's griddle opened as usual. Same flicker in the neon sign, same smell of burnt coffee and fryer oil, same hum of the old refrigerator in the back that no one had bothered to fix. But something felt different. Layla felt it in her chest as she tied her apron. The shift wasn't in the air, it was in the people. There was a tension, like everyone had heard something but no one knew how to talk about it. Even Clint and his crew at table 6 were quieter than usual, like animals sensing a storm before it broke. Then, at 8:02 a.m., Marcus walked in again. This time, he wasn't alone. He was followed by a sharply dressed woman in her 30s with a leather briefcase, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair wearing a local real estate badge, and 2 community leaders Layla recognized from city council meetings. They didn't sit at booth number 2. They stood. Marcus cleared his throat, drawing the eyes of every fork in motion. "Good morning," he began, calm but firm. "I know this isn't the usual setting for a meeting like this, but I chose this place on purpose." People exchanged looks. Carla, the manager, stepped out from the kitchen with a confused smile. "Sir, can I help you with something?" Marcus nodded respectfully. "You already have." He turned to the crowd. "My name is Marcus Legrand. Some of you may remember me, most probably don't. I grew up on Monroe Street, used to ride my bike past this diner every morning." A few whispers stirred. "I came back to this town not for nostalgia but because I've got business here, and not just the kind that lives in spreadsheets." He paused, letting the silence do its work. "I've purchased 3 properties on Main Street. I've also finalized acquisition of this building, effective noon today." Now the room wasn't just quiet, it was stunned. Carla's jaw opened slightly. Clint dropped his fork. Marcus continued. "This diner will remain open, but it will operate under new management, new policies, and a new mission." He turned slightly, gesturing to Layla, who stood frozen near the soda machine. "Miss Layla Monet has agreed to serve as Director of Community Hiring for what we're calling Project Worth, a local initiative to create equitable employment, mentorship, and business training for residents in Waitress who've long been left behind." Layla's mouth parted in shock. She had not agreed. He had only floated the idea the night before. But something in the way he said it with complete confidence in her made her feel like she already had. Clint chuckled from his seat, bitter and loud. "Figures, y'all always trying to take over something." Marcus looked at him calmly. "No one's taking over. We're inviting everyone in. The only difference is this time, the door won't close for people who look like me. Or her." The briefcase woman stepped forward and began passing out flyers. Each had details about the project: free training programs, grant opportunities for minority-owned businesses, and partnerships with tech firms Marcus had built over the last decade. A customer in the corner raised his hand. "So, what's in it for you?" Marcus didn't flinch. "Legacy," he said simply. "A beat. Look, I know what this town has been. I lived it. I was turned away from this very diner as a kid, but now I own it, and I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to shift the energy." He scanned the room, eyes steady. "If you want to be part of that shift, we'll welcome you. If you want to keep things the way they've always been, you may find yourself standing still while the rest of us move forward." Someone clapped. Then another. It wasn't a standing ovation, but it didn't need to be. It was enough. Clint muttered something under his breath and threw a crumpled napkin on his plate. He stood up and walked out, No one stopped him. Carla quietly slipped into the back. Layla stood there, hands trembling slightly, eyes full of something she hadn't felt in years. Belonging. Marcus walked over and handed her a folder. Your new title's on the front. You'll need to review it by Monday, but I figured you deserved to hear it here, in front of everyone. Layla looked down. Community Director. Salary, $68,000 per year. Plus health benefits. She blinked hard. You serious? She whispered. As a heart attack, he said. She didn't smile. Not yet. But she nodded slow, proud, and certain. Because for the first time in Waitress, someone had flipped the lights on. And no one could unsee the truth anymore. For a brief moment, it felt like things were changing. The applause had died down. The flyers had been passed out. The whispers in the diner turned from gossip to cautious curiosity. Some folks looked excited, some skeptical, but something had shifted. Layla could feel it. But in Waitress, change didn't come without pushback. Especially not from the ones who'd built comfort around keeping things exactly as they were. By the next morning, the resistance had a voice. And it was loud. It came in the form of whispers that weren't really whispers. Side comments made just loud enough for Layla to hear as she moved through the diner. She got that job 'cause she's pretty and black, not 'cause she earned it. Must be nice to skip the ladder when someone rich hands it to you. Probably sleeping with him. That's how these girls do it. Layla didn't respond. She'd learned that words could bruise harder than fists, but silence was a weapon, too. Still, that silence didn't protect her from everything. 3 days after Marcus's announcement, the same group from Table 6 walked in. Clint wasn't alone this time. He brought friends louder, drunker, meaner. They didn't order right away, just sat there, staring. Layla kept her posture straight as she approached, pen and pad in hand. Morning, gentlemen. What can I get started for y'all? One of the men, a broad-shouldered guy in a hunting jacket, leaned forward. I'll take a side of whatever you gave Mr. Moneybags to get that title. The table erupted in laughter. Layla blinked once, her jaw clenched, but she didn't move. Clint leaned back in his seat, arms crossed. You think we don't see what this is? They're trying to make this town into something it ain't. She stayed still. Sweetheart, another added. You can smile and pretend all you want, but some of us ain't about to take orders from someone who was scrubbing ketchup off these tables last week. That one stung. Hard. But it wasn't new. She'd heard it in different forms her whole life. What made this time different was what happened next. Marcus walked in. He wasn't supposed to be there, not until his meeting later that day. But something in the energy must have drawn him in like gravity. He stopped short when he saw the scene. Layla, standing tall in the middle of 5 grown men who were trying to shrink her with laughter. Marcus didn't raise his voice. Didn't cause a scene. He just walked over and stood beside her. His presence silenced the room. Problem? He asked, voice calm. Clint didn't flinch. No problem. Just expressing opinions. That's still legal, right? Marcus nodded. Absolutely. And it's legal for you to take your opinions somewhere else if you can't respect my team. My team. That phrase echoed through the diner like a challenge. Clint stood. Listen, big shot. You can throw your money around, buy up the block, bring in cameras and charities, but you'll never change what folks really think. Marcus stepped closer but still didn't raise his voice. I'm not here to change how you think, Clint. I'm here to give people like Layla a choice, a chance. Something you clearly think they don't deserve. Clint scoffed. Deserves a strong word. Marcus turned to Layla. And for the first time in front of everyone, he spoke directly to her. You don't owe anyone here silence. You don't owe them grace. But if you have something to say it now. Not for them, for yourself. Layla felt her heart pounding. Her hands shook. But she met Clint's eyes. You think I got this position because I'm black? She said, voice steady. You think it was handed to me? You didn't see me taking night classes online after my shifts. You didn't see me feeding my mom, paying rent late, working doubles while you drank beers at that booth. She took a step forward. I didn't skip any ladder. I built my own. The diner went still. No one laughed. No one spoke. Clint opened his mouth, but no words came. Layla turned back to Marcus. "I'm ready for the meeting." He smiled. "Then let's go." As they walked out, one of the older customers near the window, a man who hadn't said much in years, clapped twice. Then a third time. Then the room joined in. Not loud, not theatrical. Just honest. The kind of applause that didn't say, "Congratulations." It said, "We see you now." And for Layla, that was more than enough. To most people, Layla Monette was just a pretty girl in an apron. Another nameless waitress at another run-down diner in another small southern town. But that's the thing about survival stories. The best ones are often invisible. Until you look close. Layla's story didn't begin with Ricky's griddle. It began 17 years earlier, on the floor of a hospital room, where she watched her father take his last breath after a construction accident left him paralyzed for months. She was only 5, but the image never left her. The hum of the machines, the silence after they shut off, the way her mother stood upright even as her world collapsed. Denise Monet, her mother, was the kind of woman who believed in books more than television. A nurse by trade, a fighter by necessity. She raised Layla alone, teaching her how to stitch a torn hem and write a thank you card before she was 10. Her favorite phrase? "You were born with royalty in your blood, don't let this world convince you it's rust." Layla was gifted. Not just in the academic sense, though. Her grades had always been near perfect, but in spirit. She could draw entire cityscapes by age 12. By 14, she'd built a model of their tiny duplex out of cardboard and glue, reshaping it into the kind of home she believed they deserved. When her mother had her stroke, everything stopped. College acceptance letters went unopened. Scholarships were declined. Layla got a job the same week her mom came home from the hospital, not out of guilt, but because no one else would step up. She sold her sketch pads, pawned her tablet, took a night job mopping floors at the high school she had once dreamed of leaving behind. What no one saw was that in the quiet hours between shifts, between hospital visits, Layla was still learning. She used the free Wi-Fi at the diner after closing to take online courses in architecture and city planning. She watched TED Talks while folding laundry, read ebooks about design and urban equity. Her notebooks, stacked under her bed, held sketches of a better Waitress, one with inclusive housing, restored parks, walkable streets, and buildings that didn't feel like cages. No one ever asked what she dreamed about. Until Marcus. He didn't just give her a title. He gave her a mirror. And in that reflection, the truth finally surfaced. Layla Monette wasn't just a waitress. She was an architect of change. Marcus had done his homework. The night after their first meeting, he pulled her name into a search engine. What he found surprised even him. Archived articles from high school science fairs. Photos of Layla receiving awards for STEM competitions. A write-up about a scholarship she earned for young black women in design, one she had declined due to family medical circumstances. Buried beneath the monotony of diner work was a mind as sharp as any he'd hired in Silicon Valley. But it wasn't just about intelligence. It was about vision. When Marcus asked Layla to present at the upcoming community board meeting, she hesitated. Her hands shook as she held the proposal draft, unsure anyone would take her seriously in a room full of decision-makers. "You built this," Marcus told her. "They just haven't seen it yet." So, she did. She stood in front of a dozen skeptical faces, city council members, old guard business owners, even the mayor, and spoke with clarity and conviction. She didn't ask for pity. She offered a blueprint. A real one. One that showed a plan for converting vacant lots into green spaces, for restoring historic black neighborhoods without displacing families, for using local talent to lead local projects. Her voice never cracked. When she finished, no one clapped. They just stared. Not with judgment, with realization. That this young woman, once dismissed as just a server, might be the best shot Waitress had at rebuilding itself, not just with bricks and mortar, but with compassion. By the time she stepped out of that meeting, 2 board members had asked for follow-ups. A developer requested a tour of her sketchbook, and one of her harshest critics simply nodded and said, "You surprised me." That night, Layla didn't cry. She opened her notebook and drew. Not because she needed to escape, because she was finally building something real, and this time, the world was watching. They changed the sign first. It wasn't dramatic. No big ribbon cutting, no cameras, just a quiet Saturday morning, with Marcus standing on a ladder, tightening the last screw into the new wooden letters that now hung above the door. Monet's Diner. Not flashy, not corporate, just honest. Like the woman it was named after. Layla stood across the street, arms folded, watching in disbelief. Her name, her family's name, now part of the skyline. Not on a gravestone, not in a forgotten registry, but in bold lettering where everyone had to see it. The town noticed too. Some slowed their cars as they passed. Others just stared, unsure of how they felt, but aware that something had shifted for good. Inside, the diner smelled different. Not because of new paint though, the walls were now a soft sage green instead of faded yellow, but because the energy had changed. Gone were the chipped booths and greasy floors. In their place, refurbished wood, polished chrome, plants in the corners, art on the walls. And behind the counter, a staff that reflected the town as it really was. Black, white, brown, young, old. Hired not for who they knew, but for what they brought to the table. Layla walked through the kitchen that morning in awe. Reggie, the old cook who'd spent 20 years in the shadows, now wore a clean white jacket with his name embroidered across the chest. He smiled for the first time in weeks. "This feels different," he said. "It is," Layla replied. The grand reopening wasn't publicized, but word spread fast. By noon, every booth was filled. Families who hadn't stepped foot inside in years came back, curious and cautious. Even a few critics from the town council showed up, quietly slipping into seats, scanning the new menu like it might bite. But the biggest surprise came at 1:17 p.m., when Carla, the former manager, walked through the door. She stood near the entrance for a beat, unsure. Layla spotted her instantly. She didn't smile, didn't wave. But she walked over. "Can I help you?" Layla asked, voice calm, neutral. Carla looked around, eyes lingering on the smiling staff, the filled tip jars, the clean counters. "I just wanted to see it," she said. "See what you did with it." Layla nodded slowly. Carla hesitated. "I may not have handled things right. With you." Layla didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because dignity doesn't always show up in words, sometimes it shows up in restraint. Carla turned to leave. Before she reached the door, Layla said quietly, "I hope you find your peace." And that was it. By late afternoon, the music was low and smooth, a playlist curated by Layla herself, full of jazz and soul, songs her mother loved to hum while cooking. People stayed longer than usual. They talked softer, tipped better. And when Marcus walked in, nobody stared. He wasn't the billionaire anymore. He was the reason this place still stood. He walked straight to the counter, where Layla was refilling the coffee pot. "You look tired," he said with a grin. "I am," she replied, smiling back. "But it's the good kind." He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a key. "To the office," he said. "It's yours now. You don't need my permission to lead." Layla blinked. "I don't know what to say." "Say thank you," he joked. She laughed. "Thank you." Then she paused. "But not just for the job. For seeing me before the world did." Marcus nodded. "Sometimes, it just takes one person to recognize your worth before others catch up." As evening fell, the sky painted the town in shades of gold and rose. The diner lights glowed from the windows like a promise kept. Outside, the new sign caught the sunset just right. Monet's Diner. Not just a restaurant. A declaration. That dignity can be returned. That stories can be rewritten. That worth, no matter how long it's been ignored, can always rise again. The diner had finally quieted. The last slice of pie was served. The laughter had softened. The jukebox played low in the corner, a Marvin Gaye tune Layla's mother used to dance to in the kitchen. Marcus sat alone in booth number 2, sipping from a chipped mug. He insisted they keep, said it reminded him of the old days. Layla joined him, her apron untied, her eyes heavy with exhaustion but bright with something deeper fulfillment. For a few moments, they didn't speak. It wasn't awkward. It was peace. Then Marcus looked at her. "You ever stop and realize how far you've come?" he asked. She leaned back, folding her arms. "Sometimes," she said, "but mostly, I'm too busy thinking about how far there still is to go." He nodded. "That never goes away. Success doesn't make the mountain smaller. It just gives you better shoes." She smiled, then grew serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you come back, really?" He paused, swirling the last sip of coffee in his cup. "I came back because I remembered something I forgot for too long, that power means nothing if it doesn't serve the people who shaped you." He looked at her gently. "I left this town chasing distance, but I came back chasing depth." Layla nodded slowly. "I used to think you had to leave to matter," she said. "That staying meant settling. And now I know it's not about where you are," she said. "It's about what you build when you get there." Marcus leaned forward, elbows on the table, his tone lowering. "You remind me of my mother," he said. "She was fire in a slow-burning world. Spoke softly, but never small. You carry that same storm behind your smile." Layla blinked back, the emotion swelling in her throat. "She'd be proud of you," Marcus said. "She'd be proud of you too," Layla replied. Silence again. But this time, it felt like a full sentence. Then Marcus reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, weathered notebook. The corners were frayed, the spine cracked. He slid it across the table. "This," he said, "is where I wrote my first plan for a company. Back when I had nothing but Wi-Fi, ramen noodles, and a dream." Layla opened it gently, scanning the messy handwriting, the wild ideas, the ambition bleeding through every page. She closed it and held it close. "You're giving this to me?" "I'm passing it down," he said, "because someday soon, someone's going to ask you how you did it, and you'll need a place to put your answers." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from being seen so deeply. She looked at him. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked. He laughed softly. "Every damn day." "Then why keep pushing?" "Because I owe it to the ones who couldn't, the ones who never made it out, the ones who whispered their dreams into pillows, hoping someone would hear them through the noise." He looked up at her, his gaze steady. "And now, it's your turn." Layla nodded. "I'm ready." "No, you're not," Marcus said. "And that's the point. You'll never feel ready, you just go anyway." They sat there until the streetlights flickered on. 2 generations. 2 stories, both stitched from the same fabric of resilience, of purpose, of rising, despite gravity. When Marcus finally stood, he placed a hand on Layla's shoulder. "Don't just lead," he said. "Lift." She nodded, gripping the notebook tightly. "I will." And as he walked out the door into the soft Georgia night, Layla sat back in that booth, the one where everything began, and stared at the empty seat across from her. Not with longing, but with gratitude. For the ones who paved the way, and for the chance to lay down bricks for whoever came next. The first story appeared online 3 days later. A small column buried deep on a local news site. Former Waitress reopens diner with help from tech billionaire. No big fanfare, just a picture of Layla in front of the diner, holding a clipboard and smiling, a little nervous, a little proud. Then came the second article, and the third. Within a week, a reporter from Atlanta drove down to see for himself. He ordered the shrimp and grits, interviewed the staff, and left with 3 pages of quotes. By the time his piece went live on the regional paper's Sunday front page, the headline read, "She served toast and insults, now she serves opportunity." The phrase went viral. That line, poetic, raw, real, was screenshotted, reshared, reposted across platforms. TikTokers made videos about it. Instagram pages featured side-by-side photos of the old diner and the new one. Twitter threads unraveled the story of Layla and Marcus like it was a modern-day fairy tale, but grittier, more honest, and undeniably true. CNN called. Then NPR. Then Good Morning America. And suddenly, Monet's Diner wasn't just a place in Waycross, Georgia. It was a symbol of second chances, of what happens when power meets purpose. Layla wasn't ready for the attention. She still wore her same old sneakers to work, still refilled coffee like nothing had changed. But when reporters walked in with their cameras and questions, she answered them with the same honesty that had once cost her promotions and respect. "I didn't plan to become a story," she said. "I just wanted to work somewhere I didn't have to shrink myself to fit in." Marcus stayed mostly in the background, declining interviews. When asked why he didn't take more credit, he simply said, "This was never about me. It was about correcting a silence." The real magic, though, wasn't in the headlines. It was in what came after. 3 local businesses announced new diversity hiring initiatives inspired by Project Worth. The high school invited Layla to speak to the senior class, many of whom had only ever known her as the girl who brought water and ketchup. She stood at the front of that gymnasium, gripping the microphone like it was heavier than it looked, and told a room full of skeptical teenagers, "You're allowed to want more than this town says you deserve, and if they don't give it to you, build it anyway." One student cried. Another emailed her later that night asking how to apply for a scholarship in architecture. Parents began showing up at Monet's with their daughters, pointing at Layla like she was a monument, not because she was famous but because she was proof that you didn't have to change who you were to matter. You just had to survive long enough to be heard. Even the town itself began to shift. City council meetings, once sparsely attended and full of red tape, now featured new voices, younger, bolder, more diverse. One of those voices was Layla's. She wasn't just running a diner anymore. She was shaping policy, advising programs, and working with Marcus to design affordable housing on land that had once been written off as worthless. And through it all, people kept coming back to the moment that started it all. The whisper. That single line, spoken over burnt toast and broken pride. "I'm used to serving toast and insults, but I never expected to serve it to someone like you." It was quiet, but it was loud enough to echo through boardrooms, classrooms, living rooms. It reminded people that change doesn't always come with a marching band. Sometimes, it comes from a tired girl in an apron who finally speaks up. Sometimes, it comes from a man who never forgot the taste of shame and decided to buy the table instead of begging for a seat. The media didn't stay forever. The cameras left, the hashtags faded, but the diner stayed. The whisper stayed. And Waitress, once known for its silence, now had a sound. It was the sound of construction, of community meetings, of laughter that didn't carry fear underneath. And in the center of it all, Layla stood quietly still, pouring coffee, still writing in that notebook Marcus gave her, still planning the next phase. Because when the world finally listens to you, you don't shout, you build. They came back slowly. Not all at once, not with confessions or grand gestures, but quietly, in their own time. The ones who had once whispered behind menus. The ones who rolled their eyes when Layla spoke. The ones who had called her, that girl from the diner, as if she had no last name, no future, no voice. They came back. Some brought excuses, others brought baked goods, most just brought themselves unsure if they'd be welcomed, unsure if they deserved to be. And somehow, that made it more human. On a gray Monday morning, Mrs. Talbot, the old librarian who used to accidentally skip Layla in line at the grocery store, walked into Monet's with a pie tin and trembling hands. "I know it's late," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "but I never said I was proud of you." Layla smiled gently. "Thank you." Mrs. Talbot cried before her coffee even arrived. 2 weeks later, Clint returned. Not with his usual posse, not with a smirk, just himself, in a weathered coat and scuffed boots, standing at the counter like a kid sent to detention. Layla saw him the moment he walked in. She didn't rush over. She gave him space. When she did approach, she didn't speak right away, just placed a glass of water on the counter like she used to. Clint cleared his throat. "I read about you," he mumbled, "on the internet." She nodded. He tapped his fingers on the counter. "Didn't think it would matter to me, but it did." Layla tilted her head. "Why?" Clint looked down. "Because I got a granddaughter, 16, smart as hell, black like you, and I realized, I want her to grow up in a place where girls like her don't have to swallow their pride every time they walk into a room, Layla blinked. She hadn't expected that. Clint looked up, eyes red. I was wrong. She nodded again. That's a good start. He smiled a little. Can I get the catfish special? You can. She didn't offer a discount. He didn't ask. Some returns weren't so delicate. Tammy, a former server who once mocked Layla's ambition loud enough for customers to hear, showed up during rush hour and sat in the far booth alone. Layla watched her from the corner of her eye. Tammy didn't make a scene. She didn't try to pretend nothing had happened. When Layla finally approached, Tammy simply said, I was jealous. That was it. No apology. Just truth. Layla didn't respond with warmth or bitterness. She just refilled Tammy's iced tea and moved on. Because not every story needed punctuation. And then there was Derek. He used to call Layla sweetheart with a tone that made her skin crawl. He'd disappeared the day Marcus took over the diner. But he came back 6 months later, clean-shaven, sober, and awkward as hell. Been working construction out in Savannah, he said. Heard what y'all built here. Layla looked him over. You here for food or forgiveness? Both, he said honestly. She gave him a seat. And a menu. Because grace wasn't weakness. It was choice. As word of Layla's leadership spread, more and more of the town's old ghosts drifted back. Former customers, ex-managers, even a few classmates who once laughed at her science fair dreams now stopped by to shake her hand. Not all were forgiven. Not all needed to be. But every return was a quiet note in a louder song. One about growth. About how healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing what to carry forward. Layla didn't need their validation anymore. But she understood its value. Because when the people who once doubted you return to witness your rise, they're not just watching. They're changing. The diner became more than a place to eat. It became a mirror. A place where people saw who they had been and who they might still become. Sometimes, that reflection hurt. Sometimes, it healed. But it always told the truth. And in that truth, people found their way back not just to the diner, but to each other. Some stories aren't meant to shock. They're meant to settle. Like dust after a storm, like the hush after truth is spoken. This was never just a story about a diner. It wasn't even about Layla. Not entirely. It was about us. All of us. Because if we're honest, we've all been someone in this story at some point, the overlooked, the overprivileged, the skeptical, the silent, the one who watched instead of stood. We've all passed someone like Layla. A woman balancing grace on tired shoulders. A worker who deserved more but asked for less, just to keep peace. A name left off the promotion list, a face faded into background noise. And maybe, just maybe, we've also been the voice that doubted her. The one who questioned how she got the seat instead of why she hadn't been offered it sooner. But the truth that rings from this story, the whisper that became a wave, is simple. Worth does not wait for permission. It shows up, it builds anyway. It whispers, even when no one's listening. Layla Monette never set out to become a leader. She never asked to be a symbol. She just refused to shrink. And in doing so, she gave others permission to grow. Marcus Legrand didn't save her. He saw her. And maybe that's the lesson that matters most right now in a world quick to cancel, to criticize, to overlook. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do for another person is see them fully. Not for their mistakes. Not for their history. But for their potential. Their quiet fight. Their unspoken resilience. So what does this mean for you, the viewer? It means you're part of the ripple. Maybe you're a manager, a teacher, a friend, a stranger at the counter. Maybe you hold more power than you think. So ask yourself, whose voice are you not hearing? Whose potential are you sitting across from every day, tucked behind tired eyes and soft-spoken words? What would happen if you stopped waiting for the world to change and started being the shift? Because change rarely starts with a speech. It starts with a whisper. With toast on a plate. With a decision to speak truth in a room built to silence it. The next time you walk into a diner, a store, an office, look closer. There may be a Layla waiting to be seen. And if you are Layla, If you're watching this with tears in your eyes because you know what it's like to be unseen, unheard, underestimated, then let this be your reminder. You are not invisible. You are not small. And no one, not a customer, a boss, a town, or a broken system gets to decide your worth. That's yours. That's always been yours. And the day you believe that fully is the day your life starts echoing with more than whispers. That's when you become the story someone else needs to see. So here's your gentle call to action. If this story moved, you share it. Not for us, but for the next Layla. Subscribe to Hidden Worth because every week, we bring you stories just like this one. Quiet revolutions, everyday legends, black stories that deserve the spotlight, not the margins. And more than anything, stay awake. To injustice, to potential, to your own voice. Because someone, somewhere, is waiting to hear it. And who knows, maybe the next story we tell will be yours.